It is Legends of Water. Today, Thursday, August 15th, episode 3 of Legends of Water broadcast. Still keeping count of briefings, even though they're monthly now, 265. Save the planet, recycle water. And the format will be, we're going to start live streaming over to YouTube. This is our pilot. Like all pilots, not perfect. So it's best if people go to the YouTube location, and we will have all the guests on it the whole time in this groovy new layout. All right, we filed our 10Q, which is due today. We filed it yesterday, actually. That's pretty darn cool. The first in our history to ever go ahead of schedule, which is very well done. Now, if you read it, you'll be very surprised because the financials show virtually no revenue. Why? Because we have a category called held for sale, and that is the Water on Demand division and subsidiary has all the revenue generating businesses, and it is now, what do things look like? Well, I'll just do a quick review here. When we say sales, we say recognized revenue, right? Which means sales that have been delivered in some way. We're running behind. We're about $1 million behind 6 months. And Dan will be covering that from his side of the shop. But the gross profit ends up about the same because the cost of goods was proportional. Operating expenses, again, roughly the same. Loss from operations, again, it's in the same order of magnitude. So all I can say is that we are at a slow beginning to 2024 compared to 2023, but we are very confident about where things are. And Dan will be covering that further. All right. And with that, I want to cover something called the exclusivity pyramid, which is, if you want to see this, it's in our deck posted on OriginClear.com under investing/presentations. And what does this thing look like? Well, it basically states how we're positioned in the marketplace. First of all, of course, there's a whole bunch of people still trying to service 150,000 water systems. Unfortunately, they are badly underfunded, and many, many legacy players fighting over a smaller and smaller pond. And that results in bigger fish in a smaller pond, and not very good for the small fish. There's a new trend, however, that's been developing for some time, which is decentralized water treatment, a well-established trend, and it now has a unicorn called Gradient. And to make it happen, you have to have the technologies to shrink things down into a smaller form factor. And just like how hard disks got smaller and smaller, water systems get smaller and smaller as they get into smaller systems. And sure enough, we have here, Modular Water Systems is a major innovator in the space. Now we come to the real differentiator, because water as a service requires capital. You cannot, quote unquote, give a water system to a client without having the capital to pay for it. Somebody's got to pay for it. So water as a service, only big water and private equity can play. Why? Because big water has capital and private equity is capital. So water as a service is closed to most water companies. The analogy I use a lot, probably too much, is if you imagine the anti-gravity chair, the chair part was easy. The anti-gravity part, really hard. So how do we achieve the anti-gravity part? Well, it's by our superpower, which is to work with Main Street investors. And what's great is that they get to be part of a oil well type energy model, or solar city type, solar as a service type model. What's good by working with Main Street investors is we get fast decisions, easy pilots, no arbitrary decisions. Basically, we're not hostage to some venture capitalist who's got his own ideas of what's right. And believe me, I've seen that. It is a horror show. Every 30 days. And the acquired companies, the companies we acquire, benefit from us grafting on this water on demand capital model. So this is what makes us exclusive. All right. And that was co-created by Ken and myself. Go ahead and let you roll this interview.
Geopolitical commentator and investigative journalist. You're listening to Pella Nuroff-Taylor on today's News Talk TNT.
Welcome back to the Pele Taylor Show on this Tuesday afternoon. We're going to talk about water now. Riggs Eckelberry is a nationally renowned entrepreneur dedicated to revolutionizing the water industry, which has reached a critical breaking point in recent years despite being essential to the planet's survival. Founding CEO of OriginClear, Riggs has developed innovative solutions to help businesses face rising water bills by tapping into new investment markets. He's even pioneering the development of water stable coins, a cryptocurrency backed by water assets. Welcome to the show, Riggs.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
We always water is the most essential thing you can possibly imagine, and we take it for granted. It comes out of our taps. If you lived just 100 years ago, procuring water would be an essential part of the day, or 5,000 years ago, water would be right there at the top of doing everything, and now we take it for granted. And you actually, everything you want to talk about today is asking us to not take it for granted, and in a way talk about it in a different way, partly as a business measure, partly as a currency measure, and partly because you want to bring some much needed capitalism, as you say, or to a business sense into the way it's being run at the moment. You're saying that a tyrannical infrastructure is keeping our water supplies poor. Is that true?
Well, I would say it's broke infrastructure. The big problem we have is that the centralized model for water treatment is broken. It was built in the early part of the 20th century. It's been way overwhelmed by industry and agriculture, which is 90% of the water demand. So the American Society of Civil Engineers has predicted that by 2029, in the US alone, we will have a $500 billion annual deficit for infrastructure needs. Now, we're printing money, but that's a lot of money, okay? And it's not going to water. The $1.2 trillion Biden administration infrastructure bill allocated a sum total of $55 billion, which is 1/2000th of the bill. So water is being neglected, and we know the conditions are getting worse because, the forever chemicals are in the water supply and so forth. So what do we do about it? That's the big question.
Tell us what these solutions are.
Very simply, we think government does a fine job with freshwater intake. Privatizing freshwater has been a disaster wherever it's been done. The big problem is wastewater. People don't realize that all these businesses send their toxic water to the central location, which intermingles it. And now you've got a terrible problem that's not being treated right. And it pollutes the groundwater. It hurts our tap water over time. So the real solution here is a very simple one. Make businesses do their own water treatment. It's called decentralized water. It's now taken hold. It's an accepted thing. When I started promoting in 2016, I was like a crazy guy. But that now has changed. So businesses are taking over their own water treatment, in part because they're now being sued for the water that they sent to the city that happens to have forever chemicals. Now there's class action lawsuits like when Big Tobacco was being sued. So we have a big problem that businesses can only solve by doing it themselves, but there's benefits for them too.
I mean, it sounds, if I were, would this apply to all businesses? I mean, I don't run a business, but if I were a small business owner, I'd think, oh, this is more bureaucracy. And how the hell are we going to treat our own water? I mean, doesn't that require a sort of duplication of effort, as it were, which with each plant, whatever, having to do its own and invest a lot in infrastructure and equipment?
Well, okay, good point. I'm old enough to have been in a queue for using the mainframe at my school. And centralized computing was theoretically a very efficient model, but it created a lot of queuing problems, right? In other words, the users were secondary to the machine. Then we went to PCs. Now, when you think about it, PCs are very inefficient because they sit idle most of the day, but they're there when you need them. So it's seemingly inefficient, but it's actually responsive. And that's the whole beauty of distributed structure, is that it's highly responsive to local needs. Now, there's additional benefits for these businesses. In America and probably elsewhere, we have hyperinflation of water rates and sewage rates, inflating faster than college tuition and health care, which in our country we pay for, just saying. So what we have is terrible inflation. It's causing poor people to literally having to default on the water. And now they're on bottled water, which is even worse. And so businesses, by going on their own system, now control their inflation. They have their own machine. They're good. They have mild inflation from services, but not what the centralized systems experiencing. The second big thing is now they can recycle and cut their incoming water costs. Because if I get the water from the city, now I recycle it. Hey, I didn't pay for that again and again and again. So it's a benefit. And by the way, it's good for the planet to recycle. We've calculated if business only recycles 15% of its water, we will double freshwater supplies. No expensive desalination plants and so forth, like you've got in Melbourne. And, it's a rational solution.
Are you saying that people should recycle sewage water?
No, businesses will recycle water for their non-potable use or irrigation, for example, right? Sprinklers. For example, let's take a brewery, right? Now, it can recycle up to 50% of its water for tank cleanouts, steam vessels, that kind of thing, without making beer with it. So that's a rational solution. Now, there's only one problem with all this, and that the breweries are not budgeted to clean water, they're budgeted to make beer. And so where's the capital coming from? And that's really the big problem that we set ourselves to solve.
I think where the water we drink comes from is sort of one of those questions that is incredibly important, but we don't want to inquire too closely. What I do know is apparently Singapore recycles all water, even as potable water, okay? So that was news to me. What your system is, you take the potable water directly from previous sources, and we recycle the water that we use in systems, what you don't drink. Does that require an investment into sort of dual infrastructure there, because that we're not using at the moment?
Yeah, well, this is exactly right. First of all, just on the subject of potable water, essentially all water on Earth has been recycled many, many times, millions of times. What we're talking about is how well is it cleaned? Singapore is delivering potable water that's far better than the tap water in America. Far better. It's been thoroughly cleaned and filtered. There's no forever chemicals. It is limpid. As good as the bottled water, this stuff that I paid money for. Israel does the same thing. Almost 90% of Israel's water is recycled. They have to. They live in the desert. The US, less than 1%. So let's take it one step at a time. The first thing is let's divorce industrial and agricultural water treatment from the central system to relieve the burden and treat residential users better. Number one. Number two, let's encourage benefit to those remote users now to recycle their own water. Great. Reduces their water rates. That's a sane solution. Number three, and this is the big one, help them with capital. And we are now doing what is called water as a service. Our brand of it is called water on demand. And water on demand is simply a way to say to the customer, here's your service contract, sign here, 20-year contract. We're going to put a machine on site. It's our machine that we keep ownership of. You just pay by the gallon, pretty much the way you were paying the central utility. So it's no muss, no fuss. It's fully maintained. And you don't have a capital requirement. It's very logical. And that brewery that didn't have money for a water system doesn't have to worry about it.
Is this related to what you talk about, water stable coins? I mean, Bitcoins are all the rage at the moment. Is that your ultimate aspiration to recreate the financial system around water? I mean, that's quite a very intriguing thought.
So how do you commoditize water? Well, you create a stable price for it. When we do water as a service and people pay by the gallon, that establishes a stable price for the water. Because here's a very important part. Where do we get the capital for all these water as a service sites? Pretty soon it's going to balloon into $50 or $100 million worth of capital that's needed to put these machines on site. If the customer is not paying, then who's paying? Well, we innovated to make it possible for the regular investor, the everyday investor, to invest in water as a service, water on demand as we call it, and get royalties, just like an oil well, right? Great. That brings asset investment in a new stable asset to the everyday investor, and it starts to create a commodity. Eventually, what we want to do is package these dividends in a digital format, right, as a cryptocurrency called $H2O. They also are able to sell or transfer any part of their futures contract, the full length of the 20-year contract. They can transfer it to other people. And now we're creating the first market in water. I want to tell you all that Daniel M. Early, PE, professional engineer, has joined us for this issue of Legends of Water. So I know that you were taking notes on this. Was basically a small selection of what was really a much longer interview, but I think he asked very intelligent questions. Covered the waterfront pretty well.
We did. A couple of comments that I would make when it comes to recycling. One good example of an emerging market where I think you will see point of use recycling is actually in the agricultural industry. I mean, business, manufacturing, industrial. Obviously, there's a lot of applications there, but in the ag industry, some of the like the pork industry, the poultry industry, humongous wastewater generator. They like the poultry farms and pig farms. But those right there, the way they are set up and the way the farms are decentralized, especially if you go out into Iowa or you go into North Carolina and states like that, perfect applications where you will drop these point of use closed loop recycling systems, and it can be done very effectively. I mean, we're talking about smaller treatment systems in the 5,000 to 25,000 gallon per day range. So that is another example of point of use, a closed loop discharge type recycling per application.
Fantastic. Why do we have a mini Veritreat? Are we back to the 60s now with mini skirts?
Yeah, everybody likes a mini skirt. So the Veritreat Mini is probably the most basic and the most common application we have for our Veritreat packaged wastewater treatment system. So July 1st, we wrapped up what I consider the R&D phase around the Veritreat iFast treatment system product line. So we did a formal launch of that product line back last month. And this one is a product line. It services the 2,500 gallon per day to 10,000 gallon per day flow range. So if you were talking about the inverted pyramid previously, but in the water pyramid, it is the more traditional pyramid. So that 2,500 gallon per day to 10,000 gallon per day application, the Veritreat Mini system fills in the second level up from the bottom. That's where that one fills in. The bottom is single family residential, where it's super common, and that probably has the highest number of wastewater treatment package applications. So we're one level up on the pyramid. It's a great product line. It really leverages our heavy plastic manufacturing capability. I will tell you the acceptance and the adoption we're seeing in the marketplace has absolutely been phenomenal, life reaffirming. So we are very, very pleased with where that product line is going. Got quite a few opportunities in Texas that are actively underway, applications in Florida, and in Pennsylvania.
Yes, and we're having a release on that with all the details coming up, and so more on that soon. We have a great partner, Environment Maintenance, who's stumping up and down the West and Central Texas on our behalf. I love it.
Yep, great partner.
So we, a couple of years ago when we launched Water on Demand, it seemed to be hard to get people going because we were talking to customers who'd already had the jobs under bid and they'd fixed the capital. Then finally we started getting, further upstream as you intended. And all of a sudden things got lickety split. Tell me what happened.
So being on the tip of the spear on the sales side of things, where we are often actively engaged with consultants working directly with end users that need wastewater treatment plants. So when we are brought into the conversation early on with a customer who knows that they have a decentralized need, that is the perfect opportunity to talk about the water on demand service model. And it has been my experience over the last 8 months, going back to January 1st, that when water on demand and water as a service is discussed as a model, and the customers, when they get their brain wrapped around that, not only are they getting engineering support and they're getting equipment, they're also getting a design, build, delivery, which includes construction. And then after construction, they've got this ongoing service contract. And they basically only have to commit to a monthly payment plan that's for some protracted period of time, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I will tell you what they love about that is that we've taken what is very complex, we've made it very simple. We call it hitting the easy button. So we've simplified the complex for them. A lot of opportunities, a lot of customers out there. When we talk about it, I will tell you this: it's actually quite overwhelming because it's like we've brought manna from heaven to these folks because it's such a challenging world to solve all these problems and to bring it together to complete a deal like that.
Because it sounds like free. Of course, they're taking a monthly expense. They're basically turning capital into an operating expense, but it solves a big capital problem. And we're in a weird period now where the federal government is printing money like there's no tomorrow, but capital is not that easy, right?
No, not commercial. No.
Not commercial capital. And so people have to personally guarantee stuff, and then they get locked up and they can't do more. Their SBA loan prevents them from doing other stuff. And so we get people going, and they have to do it. So basically you've been drinking from a fire hose, and we had to basically cut off the pilots at 2, and you have 2 in progress now that you're negotiating, right?
That is correct. We have two active projects currently underway. We're in the final development stages, sort of like dotting the I's, crossing the T's, trying to figure out what the final scope will be, what the particular needs will be, and what the customer actually wants. So very, very confident, very comfortable with where we are. I do know that this is the future for decentralized water and wastewater utilities. This solves a lot of problems. Being able to bring the finance element, the funding element, and being able to bring it all together as a single payment, that right there, and provide it as a service, it will be very, very successful. It's the industry has needed this for the last 20 years.
Beautiful. So basically, we are the only vendor of the water as a service in the small to medium systems, basically.
As far as I'm aware of, yes. As far as I'm aware of.
Amazing, amazing. All right. Well, you saw the earlier report where the first half of the year was a little bit behind. Just tell me in general how things are shaping up for the full year.
So just earlier today, I was working with our operations manager, John Vines, and he and I were looking at some of the current prospects. When we look at our opportunity list and the pipeline of sales activity that we have on the boards, I'm happy to report that we're looking at a very substantial, healthy pipeline of near-term, high probability opportunities. Right now, that number is approaching 20 million.
Whoa!
With the majority of that having developed over the last 8 to 12 months. So one thing is very currently underway. With regards to modular water systems, I would say that we're wrapping up the R&D and product development, and we're moving into the commercialization and scaling phase, especially around the Averitreat systems like the Averitreat Mini and with the Averimod package pump station. And so now we are more engaged and more focused on working with our channel partners, working with our independent manufacturers reps, with our distribution partners, really now starting to promote into the market to these end users and stakeholders that need these technologies and need these infrastructure solutions. So what that is doing is now the inbound inquiries coming into us, the active pipeline, that is really ramped up. I was telling some other folks on our team earlier today that I am very confident by the end of this year, we being Modular Water Systems, we will probably have our most active year since inception with regards to customers, prospect development, and new opportunities coming into the pipeline. So very healthy.
Well, we're going to have to disclaim that, saying that, of course, it's not over till the fat lady sings, and it ends up in generally accepted accounting procedures, GAAP revenue. But nonetheless, that is a very optimistic look, and I agree that the rest of the year looks very strong. Okay, and briefly, of course, the pump station is an interesting line because we tend to under promote it, but it's very profitable and it's actually a large capital. It's actually generates substantial revenues, and it's a different audience. It's more municipal, more large enterprise than the wastewater treatment systems, right?
It is. It is the Averimod pump station product line. While it isn't traditional decentralized wastewater treatment, it is a derivative of the heavy plastic manufacturing model that we deploy with modular water systems. That the Averimod product line, I mean, that is a fast growing segment for us within the company. Right. We just bid one job here last month. We were basis of design. Our final price tag was almost 1.2 million for that one system right there. So pump station, correct. So it does not take a lot of those to add up to a really good, strong book of business. And what people don't realize is when you're out in your car and you're driving down the highway, or you're driving down the streets in your neighborhood or in urban America, there are wastewater pump stations everywhere. They're below ground, they just don't see them, or if they see something, they don't know what they're looking at. There are millions of those in application across the United States.
Well, you can smell them when they fail.
That's right. Yep. It's a huge maintenance issue. So the plastic manufacturing, the corrosion resistance, the structural plastics we use, all of those things are huge value proposition points for the end users that are looking for a 100-year life cycle for their pump station, as opposed to a 20-year for a conventional concrete system.
Yeah, and the replacement rate is so low. In the UK, for example, they're looking at replacing these things every 200 years. Well, that's about 180 years too late for each
Correct.
One.
That's right.
The next dynasty, they'll be replacing them into the next dynasty.
Yeah. Well, if we ever have a royalty, that's kind of in trouble. But I'm not going to get into commenting on the UK royalty. But thank you for that. I have this thing about forever chemicals like CFCs. Now, what does that mean? First of all, forever chemicals are turning into a major, major concern. I can tell you that we may see some major media coverage. Our PR agency has lined up a major magazine we would all recognize is covering, and it's specifically focusing on forever chemicals. And the problem, of course, is that it's an unfunded mandate. The Biden administration has put together something like $5 billion to be spread around 150,000 water systems.
Yeah.
But if done properly, there was a success story, which was the chlorofluorocarbon, or CFC, management of the 90s, where basically we cut back on CFCs to the point that the problem is largely gone. It was an easier problem to deal with because all you had to do was cut off certain freon and so forth, replace certain kinds of gases. So the cleanup problem was not as great. But secondly, there was a lot of cooperation between governments. That is gone. Federal government is out of the water business, essentially. And so it would be nice if it was like that. That was a success story, but we're going to have to be a lot more smart about it. And the way to be smart is to, as I was saying in that interview, take the problem and delegate it to the producers of the forever chemicals, who are now being pursued legally anyway. So they might as well just take responsibility and not let the local utility screw it up, and then they get blamed.
That's correct. A couple of comments on that. Our sister division, Progressive Water Treatment, they have a capability there to address these forever chemicals. A lot of the advanced filtration systems and technologies that they deploy on a daily basis, perfectly suited, perfectly geared for that. There are a number of emerging technologies, and some of our strategic partners are working on those on similar applications and new methodologies for destroying these forever chemicals. Destruction is a common word you'll hear used in this industry when it comes to those forever chemicals. And then on the modular side, on the wastewater side, with these forever chemicals already being present in the stream, in the normal use of water in the water cycle, you have to treat on the front end at the users and those that are the primary producers, and that's going to be one way. That'll be the biggest way of removing these things and getting them out of the system. But there's going to have to be a commitment for at least a decade or two to continue to remove these forever chemicals before they make their way back into the environment, basically breaking the cycle that is currently existing right now. So you'll see a lot of these technologies are going to come about, and you're going to see those things deployed and commercialized over the next 5 years.
Yeah, like electrolysis, basically zapping the plastics, stuff like that. And so we're going to see, that's really wonderful, because the conventional ways of getting these out, which is, either activated carbon or reverse osmosis, gets rid of it. You still have a reject stream that's loaded now even more with forever chemicals.
Yep.
Fun.
And if that's not disposed of correctly, your problem starts all over again.
Precisely. All right. Now, we are like Tesla. And why are we like Tesla, Dan?
We are very much like Tesla in the fact that we are advancing and evolving our manufacturing model, our heavy plastic manufacturing model, especially with regards to like the Averitree product line. We are doing a lot of sub-assembly manufacturing. So unboxing, if you're not real familiar with what the unboxing method or what that methodology means, is basically you build subcomponents on parallel manufacturing lines, and then at some point you bring those components together and you start completing your finished final assemblies. So one of the things that we have been pursuing with modular water systems and have been pursuing now for quite some time is the continued evolution of our manufacturing models so that we can start scaling and mass producing these treatment plants. And that unboxing and this systemized modular assembly process. So the company's name is Modular Water Systems, and just happens to be that our manufacturing system uses a modular manufacturing approach to these things. So when you put the two together, it just works really well. So what we are going to see happen over the next several years is we're going to continue to see this evolution of the manufacturing model with robotics, new advanced manufacturing technologies. Those things are going to allow us to rapidly assemble these systems, these finished systems. So what that means is your production costs will go way down, which means it's more affordable to your customer, which means you'll have faster adoption. And that is the way the decentralized model will make its way into the greater market segment. So it is all about the tank. The technologies and all the things that you have are fantastic, but the water has to be stored and held and processed in a vessel. And whoever perfects the manufacturing model around the vessel will win.
And with that, we have a mergers and acquisitions program, and we'll play a clip in a moment, which basically brings in these assembly partners. The one we're going to cover, of course, is our imminent acquisition, Plaste Welding and Fabrication, but also we're talking to a control panel manufacturer and so forth. And these are all way stations on the sub-assembly game. And so we're literally, and they can operate themselves decentralized. And it actually works really well that way because everything streams to a final assembly, which is typically at the casting or mold manufacturer, right? The casting manufacturer. That's the last stage.
Yep, correct.
Before we go on, anything you'd like to add for our audience?
Well, I will tell you this, Riggs, where we are today, being August of 2024, and just with me watching and having my finger on the pulse of the water segment, the water sector, I will tell you that I am just very, very pleased, very, very excited for what the future holds. A lot of the vision we have been pursuing over the last 5 or 6 years, it continues to gel. I am sensing and feeling an acceleration in the things. The momentum is growing. I think that with these M&A targets, when these acquisitions start coming about, that right there is going to further accelerate. So the future for modular water systems is very, very bright. I cannot wait to see what 2025 will look like.
Yes, and a critical part of this, of course, is unburdening you. And I don't want any unburden from what has been jokes, please. And Ken, don't even go there.
Mid-sentence, you stopped me. Go ahead.
Exactly. So basically, to unburden Dan from his managerial functions and allow him to design and sell more and evangelize more. And we have some rising talent, which is a bit early to talk about, but we have some rising talent inside the unit, which bodes very well for the scaling of the business, because Dan, he's a key man, and the more we can pull stuff away from him, the faster we will grow.
That's right. I would say we're always looking for talent. I mean, as we really grow and start to grow next year, we're looking for really bright engineers, really motivated, passionate people that are passionate about the environment, about the water sector. Modular Water Systems is going to be a hip place to work. If you are young and looking for a place to grow, place to make your mark in the industry, send us your resume. We are looking for bright, talented engineers.
Fantastic. And of course, engineers will come out of the acquisitions over time as well.
That's right. They will.
Okay, let's move on here. The Sherman, Texas ribbon cutting is coming up. This is a Google maps a view of the facility that we've now physically moved into, and there will be a grand opening. And Tuesday the 27th, 2 to 4 p.m. I will be there. I believe Ken will be there. From what I can tell, the mayor of Sherman will be there, and of course the management team. So this is a preview, and it's much larger. It's 21,500 square feet. It's got to be about 3 or 4 times larger than the existing facility. So that's a big growth for Progressive Water. More to follow on that. And then a quick note, I think we covered this, maybe not, but why is Michael Burry selling all his gold? So we keep hearing about the recession, things going badly and so forth, but there's another trend, which I've talked to before, which is that we have regionalization going on in the world. And as a region, North America is incredibly powerful because it has all of its resources located on its own land, unlike China, Japan, and other places. It's got everything. It's kind of like a not too hot, not too cold. It's really perfect. So even though we do lots of horrible things that we hear all about, and it's very, very bad, Michael Burry, who famously said he was going into water in The Big Short, is now big on these things. I think this is a really interesting comment. There's some bad areas of the marketplace. For example, real estate is suffering badly, but there's also some good signs. So I think overall, my feeling is that really because the dollar is strong, he's very bullish on China, for example, even though China, again, on real estate, China has screwed the pooch, but they have they're really, really good at automating. And so even though their population dwindling, they are heavily investing in an automated economy. So
Curious, was that ounces? Was that gold ounces, 440,000, or was it?
he sold, no, if Fizz is an ETF, so these are shares.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I have Fizz, I've kept it. Michael, I've kept it. I'm not selling it. And that's it.
Well, let's
I'm
see
up.
who's right.
Right, exactly. All right. And we've already covered the pillar. All right, now a look at our first M&A candidate, Shaun Shoemake of Plaste Welding and Fabrication, Inc. And this was the announcement back in January, and that we would have, first of all, a strategic partnership for the assembling on site. Remember, they are the final weigh station for final product. But in addition, we signed a letter of intent to acquire them. And recently, our M&A team went on site to talk to the man. And so let's go ahead and roll a little flip.
South of Austin at Plastic Welding and Fabrication, owned by Shaun Shoemake.
This is my company, Plaste Welding and Fabrication, and we build industrial thermoplastic tanks.
We came in to get an update on where he was at. I think I was very impressed with the progress he's made.
Industrial plastics, they're easy to fabricate, they're lightweight, industrial strength, and they last forever. Plastic never goes away. So fabricated correctly with the right support, the right design and engineering, you have something that's going to last for life. In concrete, methane gas eat the concrete, so it only lasts so long. We have product out there that I built 25 years ago that I don't know if it'll ever be replaced. In very, very rough environments, it can be built in shop and it's ready to ship as a total piece, and it's ready to install, plug and play. Where with concrete, you're dependent on weather, contractors, and then again, it doesn't last forever.
It's great being here and meeting Shaun and being introduced to the business. Since I'm newer to the team, I'm still drinking from a fire hose and taking everything in. I help with business diligence. It's so much cooler to see a business in action versus just evaluating PowerPoint decks and spreadsheets. Actually, being here and seeing how the sausage is made is always really rewarding.
Texas is growing at a very fast pace, and decentralized wastewater for smaller systems, housing systems, mobile home parks, recreational parks. Just imagine the further out you are where land is affordable and maybe where people want to be, it's harder to tie into the city system. Your permitting might take a year, it might take 2 years as far as I know. So the smaller systems that we can build, which still aren't really that small, 10,000 gallons systems, that's quite a bit of capacity, you know, as opposed to tying into the city, which has so many problems.
I'm impressed with the progress he's making and to moving to the new facility in Snyder, Texas.
We just acquired a new facility that we're building and putting together and making fab ready in Snyder, Texas, West Texas town. We hired our first engineer up there a couple of months ago. So in the next 2 months, we plan on being operational. Much larger building, acreage for storage. We're also going to have a plastic weld training center there. That doesn't exist in the United States. And we will have qualification, standardization, and eventually we'll have certification. I grew up in West Texas. We've been having earthquakes there. We had 60-some earthquakes in the last month. Some pretty good trembles, some 5s, some 6s. There's oil production in that part of the state, and initially you think, well, it's got to be the fracking. But what outweighs the fracking is the deep well injection of wastewater in West Texas. In a decentralized unit, you can process on the spot, and you don't have to ship it, pipeline it. You're winning.
To learn more about the business, meet Shaun in person, hear about his view for the future of the business. Just a lot of validation of what we've learned to date, which is a big part of diligence, just making sure things are as you think.
So decentralized water, it's an opportunity for the end user. It's an opportunity for the engineering models that we're able to, put together, Dan's team. And it's an opportunity for the fabricator. We're able to build units, basically stack them up outside and ship on demand. I was introduced to OriginClear through Dan Early. Dan introduced me to Bill, his entire team, and Bill and I have started some conversations, and we've been discussing and talking about possible acquisition for about a year now. I signed a letter of intent to be acquired. Owning your own business, you want to know what's going to happen to it after you're not around. This is a great opportunity for my company, my employees, to make sure that the business carries on. Beyond me, beyond my time of being able to work, being here. And, with the models that Origin, Modular are building, we're able to standardize a unit where we can be very efficient, actually make our business model a lot easier from the engineering standpoint, that everything is not so custom.
Actually, our strategy today is one of implementing the water on demand, which is a way of creating the funds for acquisitions, but the acquisitions in themselves are going to increase the revenue and profits of the whole parent, OriginClear.
Water on demand. What can you say about their business model? You have a great product. You have something that saves everybody time and money. You have a finance plan. More or less, you turn wastewater into a utility just like water. Why didn't anybody think of this before? Years ago, I thought about this with the product we have, but I couldn't handle the production. My company just wasn't big enough to handle something like that on their own. So for these guys to come up with that and put it out there in the market and allow investors, oh my gosh, that's a great opportunity for everybody. This is actually a panel tin material, an anti-slip that's for the top of one of Modular's tanks that we're building right now. We're working on some really big projects. I'm not going to say we're going to be the biggest plastic fabricator in the United States, but I'm not going to say we're not.
That's a fantastic clip. Shaun's great.
I agree. He is a rock star, and I like how Corey's looking at the screen there. It's like, what? What's going on? Anyway, he's a good guy, and he really understands the benefit of the water on demand model for sure.
Real quick, I did want to take a quick minute just for those, because this is the newest, first time we're doing this. This page that you guys are watching on, this water.originclear.com/live link is new for you guys. I know there's a little space below the video. It says ask the panel, and a couple people, Tom, yes, thank you so much for the hello. Everything as well. I'm glad you're able to watch. And then also James, yes, you're in the right place. Yes, you can ask questions right here live on the stream, and I will see them and I will relay them to the panel. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate you guys being here.
Fantastic. All right. So here we are. We've arrived at the freewheeling discussion. So at this point, bad jokes are allowed. Everything's good. It's
it's the only kind we have.
I have bad jokes and bad jokes.
I'm being redundant. They're bad jokes. They're just jokes because they're all bad.
Okay, good. I just wanted to set you straight. I didn't want you to have high expectations.
But, we're obviously, I want to mention that there was a publicly disclosed event, which was a couple days ago. We did file, not us, FRLA, the blank check company, disclosed that it filed an amended S4, which is the merger agreement. So that continues. We don't discuss these things, but it is publicly known, and you can go to the SEC website, look up FRLA in the Edgar database, the Edgar
Right,
database,
database. Yeah.
and you can see that amended S4. So that's that story. And nothing, I'm not going to get into it, obviously, first of all, because we don't discuss it, but also because it really, there's no substantive change to the S4 per se, minor changes. Mostly what FRLA did was answer a bunch of questions, and the process continues. And that's about all I can say about that. Other than that, we're very happy with the development of Modular Water. As I said, Progressive Water is cranking some nice, large deals are being done. I can't confirm how they'll impact our sales in 2024, but it does look good. So I think we could definitely stay on pace. And there's also more mergers and acquisitions targets coming in. So we have the PWF, which we just covered, but there's more in the works, and we want to keep stacking them up in preparation for them turning into definitive agreements when the time is right.
I'm actually on the road with the M&A team next week. Looking forward to that.
You're visiting a potential target. Yes, you are.
We are. Yep.
That's
So
awesome.
we're happy with how things are going. I'm interviewing for C-level executives of the post-merger company, and I'm blown away by the quality that I'm seeing. We're focusing right now on a CFO because that is probably the most critical thing from a point of view of the M&A and the governance and the financial analysis and so forth. So, but the quality is unbelievable. I think a lot of good people are really understanding how strong our model is. So, you guys, OriginClear should be paying me less because my job's too easy.
You jest. Also, we gotta.
I'm going to let that just hang.
We're just going to let that go. I'm going to fill that void with David says, doesn't have a question. Just wanted to say that I think the format went quite well despite the few glitches. Thank you very much, David. We very much appreciate that.
And of course, it's important to stay in touch with Ken.
Yes.
He will be keeping up to date on how things are going in a more detailed way. Our role, as you know, as the Innovation Hub, will be to continue to support the fleshing out of Water on Demand as company. Currently, as our subsidiary, it only has the operating divisions, NWS, Progressive Water Treatment, and the fledgling Water on Demand. I got to use fledgling, yes. But then it does not have a management structure. That's all being done by the parent. And so we're busy implementing that. That's what I'm talking about, the C-level personnel. But there'll also be middle managers going in and so forth. So that's our first focus. But we also are planning what is our next rollout as an incubation. Sometime in 2025, we will see some action on that. Can't really discuss that right now. I did discuss a potential product with Pele. If you were listening carefully, then you know what I'm talking about, but we won't be getting into it here.
I would just comment on a couple of things. I mean, so having this conversation with Shaun Shoemake months ago, he was raving about the model. Like, he was so blown out by the model, and hearing him kind of lay it out with his own really unbridled exuberance was a lot of fun to watch. The other thing is that we've been working so hard at moving this process forward that in addition to reaching out to me, I'm going to be reaching out to a couple of you folks. I think just to kind of have some shakedown cruise on how I feel about where we're at and what steps we might want to take. So if I reach out to you, let's try to get together and spend a couple of minutes together. It's really buckle up time, and it's exciting. And from a person who doesn't sit in on a lot of those the business meetings that you have with Dan and so forth, when you shared with me the pipeline of business that had developed over just a couple of months, Riggs, I was personally blown away. So I understand. Look, and we'll disclaim, this doesn't end up as revenue, but just the possibilities are multiples of what we had seen previously. So Dan, those wheels took about a year to grip. And then when they started to, you're making smoke now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, word has gotten out. they just love the work you do. I've seen you in action. Nobody does Dan like Dan, right? So it's a lot of fun to watch. When you came out to Western PA and we met with you, just to watch you in action was a hell of a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to, you're going to be at the Texas location, right?
The groundbreaking or the
Groundbreaking, yeah, ribbon cutting.
I actually, I'm not scheduled to be there. I would love to be there.
No, he's going to see a prospective star.
Much more important.
Acquisition.
Much more important.
Yes. Yeah, I gotta go. Hey, well, you guys are out there partying and having fun. I'm out closing deals.
Yeah,
that's
what we do. We just sit around and party.
Fine, and I go around waving my hand.
That's right.
Queen Elizabeth.
Practice my curtsy.
I do appreciate the kind words, Ken. I will tell you the one thing about the marketplace, we have been very deliberate in testing the product lines, working with end users and consultants and stakeholders and channel partners over the last 2 or 3 years. And my fear is that if we were to actually shotgun blast this thing to the market, it would just, the inbound request and inrush coming into us would be so enormous, we would not be able to keep up with it.
Good news is you got the order. Bad news is you got the order.
Yeah, that's exactly
right. Yeah, no, I get it. To be in that, to be in greater demand than you can supply is a pleasant problem, but a problem nonetheless. So I think your measured approach and kind of, bringing it down to a fine point where we get these pilot, I think that's a master stroke. And
you know what they say, measure once and tear it up.
Done that a lot last year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've reached the end and, only 5 minutes over. So I think given the interesting pilot nature of this, I think AJ did a fine job.
Well, thank you.
And
our master of ceremonies.
Yeah, we're getting there. I do have a request. As we've talked about all these things and haven't talked about certain things because we can't, I think you guys can understand that there's a lot that's going on. This is a very exciting time. If you are here for the first time, if you saw us through social media and decide to join us live tonight, and you have more questions, which I'm sure you will, right below this feed, there is a video that you can click on, or there's a little panel you can click on to view an investor presentation. Ken has recorded the entire thing, and we have offerings for a public crowdfunding offering. We have offerings for accredited investors. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you're interested in being an investor, your time is now. It's not going to get any better. We say that terms are changing a lot, and we mean it. We mean that the terms are changing.
Today was the day. Now,
today was the day.
August 15th.
Due to the response that we've had, we are going to, and this is new for this, right? So you heard it first here. We're going to extend that to the 30th, but that is it. Once that is done, you are losing out on 10% of bonus shares as part of the accredited offering. So don't do that to yourself. Get with Ken now. Watch the presentation. At the end, you can go ahead and schedule a call with Ken tomorrow. Do it. Please do it.
If you don't like inflation, if you don't like the idea of losing 20% in a year, how about 10% in about 2 days?
Yeah, let's not do that. Please.
So just to the audience, what I try to do is I try to take a 30,000-foot view. I go through the business opportunity. I go through the actual investment opportunity. It's going to give you everything that you need to, like, in other words, you'll have 10 really good questions, right? And the people that have showed up with me have showed up and said, okay, I love it. I get it. I know what you want to do. I'm all in, but answer for these 5 questions for me, right? And it's real simple. So we can distill this down to a conversation between you and I, where I can lay out strategy. I can get granular with you. I can say, this is what to expect here and here and here and here, kind of entry, exit, all of that stuff. Really good insight. And I'll take as much time as necessary with you to make sure that you get it and you really understand.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Again, thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you to the people who managed to figure things out and joined us on the YouTube. And we look forward. Now, I believe, I don't have it confirmed, but Shaun Shoemake is likely to be our next Legend of Water. So that would be on the 19th of September. Thursday, the 19th of September, we will have, I think we will have Shaun Shoemake. He has not finally confirmed it, but I think it'll happen. And he's as you saw in the video, he's a pretty amazing guy. He understands this business cold, and I think he's going to be our great acquisition for 2024 or perhaps 2025. Again, I have to keep disclaiming, but I'm optimistic for 2024. Thank you all. It's been great, and have a good night, and enjoy your Labor Day, rest of your summer. We'll be hard at work. Call us up anytime and email us, and we'll be happy to respond. Thank you all.